Welcome to Women Mastering Midlife, where we dive deep into the rich complexities of womanhood in our middle years. I'm your host, Victoria Bird, a pharmacist, certified women's health coach, and your guide on this transformative journey. Whether you're navigating perimenopause, thriving in menopause, or mastering midlife's many transitions, this is your weekly dose of expert guidance, compassionate support, and a judgment-free space to explore it all. Here, we're empowering women to master midlife on their terms, reclaiming our health, our happiness, and our power. Together, we'll rewrite the narrative around this remarkable stage of life, from something to dread into a beautiful, bold transition. I'm so glad you're here. Today, I am joined by Martine Cohen, an attorney turned speaker, author, and transformational coach. After a life-altering concussion in 2016 forced her to temporarily lose the use of her brain, Martine began asking deeper questions. If I'm not my brain, then who am I? That journey led to her groundbreaking approach, No More Layers, which helps people peel back self-doubt, fear, and limiting beliefs to reconnect with their true selves. Through her book, workshops, and coaching, Martine teaches conscious communication, self-talk to success, and how to become the creative leader of your own life. Thank you so much for joining me today, Martine.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Victoria.
I'm really excited about this because, like I said before I hit record, a lot of times midlife is this point where women they start to recognize, it's not like a midlife crisis per se, but they start to recognize, okay, I've been somebody, I love what I've done, but is this all that there is? Or my kids are growing up and I have space in my life to focus more on other things. So I think that this is going to be a great conversation.
Agreed. And it's very true, especially as women, and I find that a lot with my clients as well. We're nurturers by nature. So we are either end up down on our list or kicked off the list somewhere along the line when we became either, spouses or moms or sisters or caregivers or whatever it is. And also a lot of us work as well. And so we have to remember that at some point, once all that foundational stuff is out of the way, you kind of have a little bit more time, but more than time, you have mind space. And that's when the questions start coming in.
Yeah. So if you could talk a little bit about your personal story and how this concussion led you to create what you're doing now, that would be great.
My goodness. Yeah. So I started off as I'd made a little bit of a type A, right? Like this kind of like perfectionist, like lawyer, and I've got to do well and I have to do more and it's never enough. And saying yes when you should say no. And then one day I was just driving literally and there's a car that rammed into me and I had a very serious concussion. I lost consciousness for a little bit. And when I came to, I couldn't use my brain anymore. It was like quiet. Isn't that rare? Like, right?
Wow, yeah.
It was terrifying. Honestly, it was the scariest time of my life because I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know how to filter the world. Would not be able to have this conversation. I would understand words separately, but by the end of the sentence, I wouldn't have known what had just been said. I was very sensitive to light, to noise. Like I lost myself. I didn't know if I could work again. I didn't know if I could be me again. And I didn't realize that I had become so intimately linked and identified with my brain. I loved law, mental gymnastics, all strategy, but that's all with the brain. And then not having my brain, I was like, oh, like, who am I? What am I supposed to do here? And is this permanent? Which was super scary. I was diagnosed with post-concussive syndrome, which means that they leave you up to a year to sort of see if there's any residual brain damage. And that was absolutely terrifying. And I didn't feel like myself. And so something made me go intuitively or instinctively made me go inward because I didn't know what else to do and I was terrified. And I went inside and I saw what I like to call an inner landscape with all these weeds of limiting beliefs and mental constructs and fears and things that I thought I had dealt with like years ago, right? And I was like, are you serious? That's still here and that's running my show and that's holding me back. But the most amazing thing was, and I call this the blessing of a dysfunctional brain, I had no judgment around what I found. I had no story around like, why is this here? Or how come I still have this fear? Or don't go near that or don't rock the boat. I was like free to explore like a little kid, right? In a field. And realizing all these things and going through the process, I was able to work through things and my brain is still not functional. And then the greatest thing was, well, how do I know I'm doing this? Like, what's this awareness? If my brain's not functional to the point where I can't have a conversation with another human being, but how do I know I'm doing this? And that's when I realized, oh my goodness, like, not only am I not my brain, but I'm so much more. There's an existence, the essence of me is indestructible. And it has nothing to do with any body part or organ or even my brain or even the way I filter the world. And that was the aha moment where I started to feel like, oh, I could be me again. And it encouraged me to continue working through this. And as I worked through this, I became freer and freer and less afraid. And my brain was still not working, but it was quiet. So it just let me be. So I could feel the fear. I could feel the limiting beliefs. I could work through them, but I wasn't afraid to do that. And it didn't mean anything. It kind of just was. So I didn't have blame and shame and criticism and incessant thoughts around it. Nothing. And that allowed me to fully explore. And then my brain started healing. I started energetically sort of playing and tinkering and really understanding that the brain's here to keep us safe at any cost, even if it's at the cost of our joy, well-being, or our expansion. And then the last part of that was, I know this is not just for me. There's no way in the world that I just went through all this and I'm just supposed to like go back to my regular life. Was really hard. It took everything, every ounce of courage for me to get through it, but it was meant to sort of then share with the world. And that's when I knew there was more to it than this and I had to pay it forward. And that was a conscious choice that I made.
Yeah, and I'm listening to you talk about your story, and a brain injury is absolutely traumatic and not it's not something that many people experience. And so, but on a not a lighter scale, but on a smaller scale, just recognizing in my own story, you know, I went from being a pharmacist to being a stay-at-home mom, and that was an identity shift. And I remember crying on the couch asking for like an annual review because I felt like if I'm not my job, then what am I? And then I dug into being a parent, and that was amazing. But now the kids are 16 and 14 and they're driving and they're getting ready to launch into the world. And then it's another transition of, you know, well, what can I do? What am I capable of doing? And I think that it's a lot of women get to that point where they're like, oh, wow, like I need to step into that fear and find my purpose. And it's wonderful to hear that you not only you were able to lean into that quiet, but then recognize that your purpose was so much more than just where you found it. You had to share it with everyone.
Yeah, and I also, to your point, you know, especially as women, we wear so many different hats that we don't realize that that becomes our identity and our purpose, and we live for that. But those hats are temporary, whether it's your job and then you switch jobs, or you decide to quit your job or just not work anymore, or be a stay-at-home mom, and then it's the mom, and it takes up about 20 years of your life, right? But then your kids go to college or whatever it is, or they start their own life, and then you're like, oh, so I'm not an active mom. I mean, you are, but like, what now? I have all this free time. When my kids started driving, I was like, oh, you mean you can just make a dentist appointment and it doesn't have to do anything with my schedule, right? Like, I don't have to be free. So then, and you're like, so what am I supposed to do now? It is an identity, sort of almost a mini identity crisis, where you have to remind yourself that these are roles we play, but they are not who we are. We have the capacity to do them. We grow through these things. We absolutely grow through our jobs, through, you know, our relationships, through being a parent. There's no question. It's in tremendous growth, but they're still not who we are. They're conduits to help us become more of who we are. But who we are is not dependent on anything external. So at some point, you have to have the courage to go within, not necessarily to face a fear, but to say, okay, I want to get curious now. I've done this growth, I've done this relationship, I've done this job, I've done this career. I want to get to know me better. Now it's me time. And it sounds really scary, but it's actually really exciting if you turn that fear, this is a brain hack, into curiosity. Because then your brain forgets to be afraid. And it's like, oh, wait, I want to go find out about this. I want to go know what this is. So it becomes like a little kid in a candy store that's all excited to discover. And really, this whole process that I went through and that I share with the world, it's a process of exploration and discovery.
So what was your next step once you recognized, okay, I know I need to do something with this and leave a mark on the world? What was your next step? Because a lot of women that are listening, they might have this feeling of, I have a bigger purpose and I know what it is. But then there's this, well, okay, so what do I do with it? So what was your next step?
Yeah, so that's an amazing question. For me, the next step chose me. This whole thing chose me, right? I didn't choose the accident. I didn't choose any of this, but it chose me. I find sometimes that we have an openness to something. the universe shows you the next step. Sometimes you have to take it, but sometimes it also shows itself if you just like pause for a second, especially if you're not sure what to do. And people would start coming to me and just talk to me. And I would have a different way of responding and saying, no, but I'm not sure that's what you want to do. Like you want to go, I kept on, people would come with external issues and I would refocus them internally. And that's when I realized, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do with this. And so I started having really in my living room, like these little mini classes with a group of women, and we would just discuss things and whatnot. And one day there's one of the women there was like, I really think you could help my mom. She's going through something in her marriage. I really think you could help her. I'd never done this before in my life. I'm a corporate attorney. And I was like, sure. And they leave and I'm like, oh my goodness. You leap. It's a leap of faith. When you know that this is something you need to do, it takes courage. So your answer, to your point, the answer is, first of all, know that you're going to need courage to follow this, because this is not so much a decision, but it's almost like a calling or a different purpose that's really just about you, not about the kids, not about your spouse, not about family, just about you. And when we're not used to doing that, we're conditioned otherwise. That can be a really scary proposition, and almost one that some women don't give themselves permission to sort of explore. So give yourself permission. It is scary. It'll ask for courage, but it's so worth it. And I said yes. And I was like, I don't know how to prepare for a session. I don't even know what I'm saying. I need such inner trust. I'm like, okay, if this is like, I'm like, okay, universe, if this is something that I'm meant to do, then just give me the tools. Just allow me to do this properly. And I'm going to show up fully. I'm going to trust this. And I'm just going to do what I can. And it was amazing. And I helped this woman tremendously. And as I was hearing myself say stuff, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, what is this? What's going on? And I realized that process had led me to such an openness and an understanding of things and connecting dots that I was able to then transmit over to other people or help them see it from a different perspective. And it took a long time for me to trust this. It really did, because, the sort of the cerebral mind and the logic was like, are you kidding me? Like, what are you doing here? So it's a lot of inner trust and a lot of just trusting that, you can go into the deep end and you have what it takes, because if you're brought to that point, you can do it. We have all the wherewithal and the resolve that we need within us. It's just that we don't trust it a lot of the times and we're scared. And so we create a whole story around it. I shouldn't, it's not the right time now. My kids might need me in 10 years, so I shouldn't do it now, right? Any little excuse to make ourselves smaller instead of just expanding, even organically. You don't have to rush to do something, but don't hold yourself back. And it evolved organically over time. Then I wrote a book. Then I became a speaker. Then my book won awards. And then I'm on the podcast.
Yeah.
Right? On and on. So you just follow it. Don't be afraid to just follow it. Follow your intuition and follow what you know, that voice that tells you what the next step is. It's okay to trust it.
Well, and as I'm hearing you, I feel connected to the sense of imposter syndrome that a lot of women have that prevent them from taking that next leap. And, I need to have one more certification. I need to be educated to do this. I have to, all of these things. And there are some callings that would require licenses and things like that. But for the most part, we get so stuck on not being good enough, smart enough, ready enough, that it prevents us from taking these steps. And it sounds like your organic process really just kept bringing more and more abundance to your life.
Absolutely. And, the word readiness is like tricky because it's something that we expect to feel before we start. And I'm saying starting and doing gets you ready, right? It's like if you want to start exercising to have some muscle tone, you need to start the exercising first. You need to take the first step in order, and taking that first step shows you that you trust yourself to take it, and that gets you ready for the next step. So sometimes we don't feel ready for the entire process, but what we don't realize is we don't need to be ready for the entire process when we're first beginning. We just need to be ready for that first step, and that first step readies you for that next step, and that's a solid way to move forward. So when my clients come in, I'm overwhelmed, I need to change careers, and I don't know, and I'm like, okay, let's just break this down, because you're not overwhelmed, but your brain is. You see, you have the full vision. But now you have this internal dissonance between you and your brain. And the brain is the imposter syndrome. It's like, okay, how do I stop her? This is scary. I can't do this. I can't keep her safe. That's, 10 steps ahead. Oh, let me make her feel bad. Let me make her feel like this is not a good idea. Like she's letting down her family, or she'll never succeed. Or, right, there's fear of failure, there's fear of success, there's all sorts of fears that your brain comes up with just to keep you where you're at. And the idea is, thank you for bringing this to my attention, but I disagree. I can do this. I'm fine, right? We can disagree with our fears. We can disagree with our thoughts. And then we can move forward in a way that feels right to us. But again, we don't have to be ready for the entirety. Just be ready for one step at a time. And once you're ready for that step, what's the next step you're ready for? And before you know it, it's that consistency that gets you to where you want it to go, into that success. But that's first internal, because you're hearing yourself, and then it reflects externally too.
So could you talk a little bit about, your book is called No More Layers, and what do you mean by layers, and how are they shaping the way we show up in midlife? I feel like this is somehow connected to what we've been talking about already, but I want to know exactly what layers mean.
Yeah. So when I went inward and I did all this internal work, and I realized that we have what I called, or what came to me as, layers, which means things that are really in the way between who we are and what we know we can be, and how we've been living because of our restrictive thinking about who we are, right? We identify ourselves in a much smaller way than what we actually are. And that's why we can get frustrated. That's why we feel like, okay, I need more in my life. No, I don't need more in my life. I need to be more in my life, because I actually am more, and I'm not living up to that. So I feel constricted, right? So layers are things that hold you back. Layers are things that run your show. There are layers of perfectionism. That was me. There's layers of shame, layers of, identity. Like I'm a mom, or I'm a pharmacist, but that's all I am. That's it. Or I'm a lawyer, but that's it. I'm not a lawyer. I'm me, and I play a lawyer in my life, right? There's around agency. Oh, like I don't take responsibility for my life, or I can't do this unless, or I need to follow in, what my parents told me I need to be, or, you have to be a good mother, or a good person, or good, right? There are these kind of layers, and I call them, like, we have primary layers of protection, and they're really there to protect us, because initially they were there from early childhood as a way of filtering out the world and a way of protecting ourselves, and also a way of understanding who we are. But when a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old identifies who they are, when you're 30 and 40 and 50, you're not going to ask the 3-year-olds for advice on how you live your life, but yet your identity was formed in those early years, and your understanding of who you are and your capacity follows you. And I have some people that come to me and they're like, I don't think I can do that because I'm not smart enough. And when we start talking about it, it's because, their grade 2 teacher or grade 3 teacher or whatever it is, told them over and over again, you're stupid, or you're not going to do well, or they didn't do well in math, or there are some very successful adults who still believe that they're imposters because they're really not that smart. They're stupid. They do believe that. And it's a belief system that actually runs your show and will instruct the decisions that you make, the way you see yourself, and certain things that you may or may not do because of that. So it's a whole navigation process that's kind of based on these, sort of early on childhood limiting beliefs that become part of the algorithm or the equation. So we don't know that they're there until we go back and look at them and say, wait, I don't want this here. I don't agree with that. And then we can reframe that, we can rewire our brains, and then we can also free ourselves from that. So we free ourselves from those layers, and we have primary layers, and then there are derivative layers, right? And then you become more of who you are. And you do that by questioning, by, sort of looking at the relationship you have with yourself, and really going inward rather than being always outwardly focused for validation, for self-worth, for self-esteem, and for self-connection.
That's really, I like that. I feel like I'm having my own little personal session right now. I like this. This is why I love the podcast, because I selfishly get to have these conversations with people like you. Are you ready to finally get personalized support for your midlife health without committing to a long program? With my new one-on-one coaching model, you'll start with a single 50-minute deep dive session where we review your full health history, lifestyle, and current concerns. Together, we'll create a plan designed specifically around your hormones, stress, sleep, and nutrition, one that's actually realistic for your life. From there, you can book follow-up sessions whenever you need them to stay on track, get accountability, overcome obstacles, or simply have someone cheering you on along the way. There's no pressure, no long-term contract, and no need to repeat the initial consult. Once you've completed that first session, you're my client for life, and we'll keep in touch in between your sessions. This flexible approach is built for real midlife women who want to experience guidance, science-based strategies, and compassionate support that evolves with them. If you're ready to take the first step, visit womenmasteringmidlife.com to book your free 15-minute discovery call. Let's talk about your goals and map out your next steps toward feeling vibrant, confident, and in control of your health again. A lot of times, women in perimenopause and menopause will struggle with that self-doubt and fear. How can peeling back the layers help them reconnect with their confidence? Like, how do you work with those women?
So, and I do, but the first thing that I let them know is that this is 100% okay. I don't like to use the word normal, but really it's normal. It's okay. Because one of the things that people come to me is, I shouldn't be feeling this way. Why do I feel this way? I know it's hormonal, I know it's this, but I shouldn't. In other words, they're already upset at the fact that they're upset or that they feel destabilized. And so that's that critical voice that says, you don't have a right to feel this way. You should not feel this way. This reflects poorly on you, right? It's like a sort of a really harsh critic that comes and says, you don't have a right to feel how you feel. You don't have a right to think how you think. And because you do, then you're worthless. Boom. That's how we start. And it's like, okay, we're going to reset this. This is 100% part of a biological, physiological process that women go through. Every woman goes through it, slightly different age, doesn't matter stage of life, but you're going to go through this. So this is fine. You're not, second of all, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not destabilized, and you're more than this process. Just like I'm more than my brain, you are more than your process. This is your body going through something. This is your brain chemistry going through something, your hormones, but it's not you. You're good. You're stable. You're in there. It's like the eye of the storm is the most stable place to be. That's where our essence lives. So it's to understand who we are versus our body, our emotions, our thoughts. They're not who we are. They're just part of our life experience. Very big difference, because then you remain empowered. When you remain empowered, you have your wherewithal, you have all your tools. You don't forget who you are, and you can use those tools to then say, okay, so if I feel this way, what do I want to do about it? So I feel I have the self-doubt coming out. Great. Let's see the validity of it. First of all, do I agree with it? Do I really feel that all of a sudden now at 45 or 47 or whatever, boom, that's it. I'm not worth as much as I was when I was 35. Probably not. You're probably worth more because you have more life experience, you have more wisdom, you've done more, you've accomplished more. Therefore, you have better tools. It's not the accomplishment that matters. It's the growth that happens through those things. And it's not about looking back and saying, I'm not that anymore. It's about, you mean I'm so much more than that now. This is a new opportunity. So when we start feeling what I like to call wobbly, that means you have opportunity for self-growth. So you can look at the doubts and say, do I agree with this doubt? Where do I think it's coming from? Never why. Why is it judgment? Judgment leads to criticism. It's where, what is this about? And where in my body do I feel it? So normally when we feel like this, we want to escape our bodies and we want to go for external validation or external numbing or external something. And I like to bring my clients back. Let's go back to you, because the truth is, you need the connection to yourself so much more when you don't feel good than when you do feel good. And when you don't feel good, this is when we try to escape ourselves. But if we just went within and gave ourselves like that kind of like figurative hug, in other words, saying, okay, this is where I need to regain my stability, right? My center of gravity. I just need to shift it. I had it to a certain point in a certain way. For me to have it now, I just need to shift it. Nothing happened. I'm just going through a different stage, which means I have different needs. So it's to work and partner with yourself and be committed to yourself in a new way. And that works really well, because all of a sudden they're much more re-empowered and saying, well, I can do this, but actually I have to do so much more than this.
Is that similar to the 4-minute reset tool that you use to help clients, stop the mental chaos in its tracks? Could you describe that the 4-minute reset a little bit in depth? Absolutely.
So it's a little bit kind of like that, but I have something better for your audience, is that I'm going to gift it to them. So okay. 4-minute reset it's like there are 2 videos in the span of 2 days, and there's like a little cheat sheet and sort of an email that they get, and they can get it online for free. I like to do that on the podcast because that's just my gift to the audience. And so they can learn to do it. on their own. But really the 4-minute reset is more about the incessant thoughts, because at the basis of all self-doubt, at the basis of all that imposter syndrome or that kind of, I don't know who I am anymore, that identity crisis is really fear. And at the basis of all fear is really just thoughts from our brain that generate that and sort of nourish that fear and nurture it and grow it. And so the 4-minute reset is really about, first of all, understanding what your thoughts are about, that they're not a reflection of who you are, and that there's so much that you can do about it. So really the way the 4-minute reset works is that, first of all, it's about the nervous system. It's overly stimulated. And in today's world, we wake up overly stimulated. Like, we don't have a chance. We just don't have a thought, right? It's in the middle of the night, you're already overly stimulated. So by the time you wake up, you might feel well rested, but your brain's already like on overdrive, and it's, so you really just, and it sounds cliche to just breathe in and out for even just like 3 times, but it does scientifically reset your nervous system, and we need just to reset. And then it's about identifying that thought. Like, what am I thinking now? Not why, but just what is this? And then the juicy part is to start questioning. So wait a minute, do I agree with this thought? I think people don't ask themselves if they agree with the thought. They just kind of like take it and run with it, and it can ruin their day. It can ruin much more than that. It can make them feel bad about themselves. And who says it's even true? And then it's, well, if you don't agree with this thought, what would you agree with? What would you say instead? What would you respond to the thought? So it's these little fun exercises that they sound funny, but they are so effective in the moment. Like, absolutely disempower the fear completely. And then it's like, but for this thought, what would you be feeling then? Like, if you didn't have this thought, would you be feeling the same way about whatever it is that you're thinking about? Or would you have drawn a different conclusion? And then if you could have chosen a thought instead of the one that your brain gave you, what would you have chosen? I promise you, over 95% of the time, it is never the thought that your brain came up with. It will be your thought of choice. So then it's like, well, why am I buying into this? Right? Why don't I redirect my brain, reframe my brain? You can actually rewire your brain to give you a different cluster. I call them cluster of thoughts because thoughts come in clusters. They come in patterns. A person who is negative versus a person who's positive, they're not really negative or positive. It's just that their brain sort of really generates for them a lot of positive thoughts because it just becomes a snowball effect. And so they feel more positive. Or a person who grabs onto a negative thought or two, the brain's like, oh, she likes negative thoughts. I'm going to show her the world. I'm going to filter the world for her through negativity because that's what she seems to grasp. The brain has no discernment. It'll give you whatever you take, right? It's like a smartphone who sort of has that algorithm. Yeah. So it's understanding, really having an intimate understanding how the brain works so that we don't fall into the traps, but we just understand it is overwhelmed and we have to just partner with it and do what I like to do, which is talk it off the ledge. It's like, I've got this. Thank you for the warning, but I've got this. So then it's back to what I was saying. But for this thought, what would I choose? And then now that I've chosen the thought, what's my next step? And it's really teaching the brain to look at things differently. And over time, it becomes second nature. Every time you do this, you're rewiring your brain to give you a different category or different quality of thought. And then over time, it actually gives you what aligns with you. So you don't want to pretend. You don't want to deny. You don't want to not see something. But it doesn't have to be dramatic like that. It doesn't have to be critical like that. And it's probably not helpful and not creative and not constructive. So you want it in a way that actually helps you along in your life and your goals, not the reverse.
Yeah, it's amazing. Our brain could be our greatest ally or our worst enemy.
Yeah. But one thing, it should never be in your driver's seat.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's important. Well, for me, what I'm feeling from this, when we wake up with all that noise, like there's noise outside in the world, but there's even more noise in our brain and in our heads. And when we wake up with this and we just start feeding it and allowing it to take control, it really does, it helps you almost fulfill that negative belief about yourself. Do you know what I mean?
It totally does. And because it starts small with one thought, 2 thoughts, 3 thoughts, and then it just keeps going and going and going because it wants to make sure that you don't miss anything, right? But I don't need to hear all day long, like, oh, I lost my keys, therefore I'm not worth it. I'm not a good human being. Like, it also snowballs. It's like, okay, I don't know where my keys are, so let me go find them. Like, right? But it never stops there because your brain just keeps going because it's overwhelmed. It's already overwhelmed. So it just goes, it's like short circuited. So we do need to understand also that in 2025, our brain just has way too much to filter and it's not functioning the way it's intended to. And therefore it's consistently most of the time in a fight or flight kind of situation. It's not relaxed. So we have to disconnect. We have to do all these artificial or extra things, meditate, go in nature, decide to disconnect from our phones for 24 hours, whatever it is, just to get the normal quiet that our grandparents had or our parents had, right? In other words, it's because they used to live in the way that was sort of like accessible to the brain and much more at a brain's pace, whereas today's world is completely wild for the brain and it just doesn't know what to do anymore. So it's warning you much more than it needs to, just in case, because it really is an overdrive. So it's like anxiety inducement. The brain is anxious. We have anxious brains today. Not because there's anything wrong with us, but because of all these external stimuli that just overwhelm the brain. So if we understand that, I really do talk my brain off the ledge. In other words, I can feel the anxiety in my brain and I've learned to separate. We don't have anxiety per se. Our brain will feel anxious about something and you can agree with it or disagree with it, but most of the time it's not going to be such a big deal. And I've trained my brain to sort of show me a solution to something rather than to sort of focus on the anxiety or the problem. It's like, okay, let's go get curious. And when you say that, the brain forgets to be fearful and gives you some really creative, cool ideas about things, but you have to be the leader. So this book's really about self-leadership because you have to lead. You cannot let your brain stay in control because it's a very anxious leader, and that's not what you want because it'll make you feel like you're losing your footing.
Yeah. Well, in 2020, with the dumpster fire of the world, I stopped looking at the news because my brain couldn't handle waking up and seeing the news. And so then I stopped doing that. But then I went to social media, and then you get like the FOMO, you're seeing people doing things you wish you could do. And then I was like, okay, enough of that. And then I was just recently starting to look at LinkedIn and connecting with other providers, especially as opportunities to connect for the podcast. And then I started getting like this feeling of like, look at all these people, like they're getting all these new jobs and they're starting these new careers or they're launching businesses and they're about my age and they have all this experience that I didn't have because I stayed home with kids and it just turns into this flurry. And I'm just going to sit outside with a notepad and just get creative on things I can do for myself.
Right. We go back to the basics. That's the frenzy of the brain, right? It just goes into frenzy, but it's not because you're actually missing out on anything, because if you take a step back and you sort of reset your nervous system and say, okay, like what of this is actually truth? What of this do I actually agree with? And what of this is actually fear-based? Because you can choose whatever you want, right? So it's a reaction. And I work with my clients to sort of move away from reactivity mode, which is a mode of frenzy and a mode of anxiety, to proactivity. Like we need to proact in our life. But in order to proact and choose, then we need to step away from that frenzy for a minute and say, okay, whoa, hold on a second. Let me do that 4-minute reset. And do I agree with that? I wasted 20 years of my life. No. Great. If I had gone to work, where would my kids be today? How would I feel about it? Like, this is a story that our brain says in the moment. But the truth is, if LinkedIn showed all these people, sort of disconnected from their kids, let's say, whatever, I'm just making something.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, great, I made the right decision. So why is it externally dependent, right? When you did something that was aligned, I'm using you as an example, right?
Yeah.
You did something that was aligned with you. So we forget about the alignment because our brain takes us on this wild journey of like, you're doing everything wrong. You will always do everything wrong because somebody else will be choosing to do something not right, just differently. Well, what does that make me wrong? Why do I have to? Let me just follow my path. And as long as everybody's following their path, and that's the sort of, I think, the trap with social media and something that we have to, our blind spot, is that it's not that there's no right or wrong. The right is what's right for you. And the right is what's right for that person. And that's great. If everybody's doing things differently, then they're probably doing it properly. But if everybody's doing the same thing, somebody's not aligned in that. Because we each have our own path. And so it's really to remember and to go back to what's reality, because social media is so not reality. We don't even know what's true, what's not true. I was talking to a friend of mine before and I was like, yes, it's unboxing, sort of a designer bag and it makes you want it. But if you didn't want it before, then why does that all of a sudden make you feel like you're missing out on something if that's not part of your value system or that's not part of what you're looking for? It's the desire in the brain. It's the FOMO, but FOMO is based on fear. It's fear of missing out, literally fear with a capital F. And do we really have fear of missing out? And what are we missing out on? Is this something that we would want? It's something like, you're at the cash and it's like 2 for 1. I wasn't going to buy one at all. But now that it's a bargain, 2 for 1, maybe I should buy them because I'm going to miss out on a deal that I wasn't intending on buying at all. Not even one of these items to begin with. So we know the brain can be manipulated, but we need to wire it in a way that serves us and that's aligned with us. And we forget about our alignment because we get into automatic pilot.
Yeah, it's like that free shipping hook. I want one thing for $25, but if I spend $50, I get free shipping, and I can't pay for shipping anymore. So I need to spend.
Right, exactly.
I need to spend even more money.
But the shipping is $10, but you're going to just buy more for $50, but exactly. You weren't intending to begin with, right?
Yeah, yeah. So when we were talking about LinkedIn and the FOMO and seeing how things are see how people are doing things, it brings me to my next question quite well. I think that in your coaching, you blend personal transformation with leadership. And so how do these two intersect?
So it's really fun, actually, because I bring in my skill set and my strategy from corporate law into this. Because leadership is about self-leadership first. You can't lead your teams, you can't lead others unless you lead yourself, because that's how you're going to show up. So it's all about your relationship to yourself. It's all about internally who runs your show. So the first thing I ask with my corporate clients is, who's running your show today? And so they'll start telling me about your day, and then they realize that, oh, it was my fear about this, or it was greed. I was chasing something. I really wanted to grow the company before it's ready, right? Because I don't want to miss out. Or, talk about competition. You're talking about LinkedIn, right? And podcasters and whatnot. But in the corporate world or in the world of business, it's this company's growing, at 10x cap versus another company who's growing at this, and I have to be the best company, or I have to keep up with, the competition, or I have to come up with a new product. And it's like, oh, no, let's just slow down for a second. And what's your motivating factor here? Because if it's fear, it's not going to work. If it's greed, it's also not going to work. It's got to be something that's aligned. It can be anything, but if it's aligned, then it will work, because you will be successful, because it'll mean something to you and you'll find the path that actually works for the company. And a lot of times, my clients have goals that are actually not aligned with them. They're really fear-based, and those fear-based goals kind of blur things, and they blur the right process, because it's all about the proper process. When you have the right process, the goal will come out the way that it's intended to, or even better. But if anything doesn't work out, you have to go back to your process, not to your goal, right? The goal is not in reaching our goal is really not in our hands, but the integrity of the process is. So when you look at that way, that's what is going to actually let you succeed externally, is when you are connected within. So it starts with that self-leadership, and that self-leadership creates transformation from within and growth. And when you show up with that, you're then able to accomplish whatever you want, but knowing that you're not going to allow FOMO or any other fear, or staying small, or taking up too little space, too much space, having to prove yourself, whatever it is, those cannot be the motivating factors. We really have to work through those and free ourselves of those, and then find our real purpose, or the real goal that aligns, because that's the one that's going to allow you to expand and be as successful as you possibly can be, because that's the one where you're using all of you and you're not restricted in some way. Like, you're really authentically who you are. But that's a constant check-in. I have a chapter in the book that's the inner boardroom. I love that chapter, because it allows you to, when you're at a crossroads, or any decision, or just an internal resistance that you have, I say you bring it to your boardroom. So the whole chapter explains it, and there are exercises and client stories, but just in a nutshell, you want to hear you call board meeting, and on the agenda is, I want to hear everybody's opinion about this. So we have fear coming in, we have anger, we might have greed, we might have competition, we might have the image that we need to portray, we might have to, I don't want to let down my partner in business, any number of things, and you hear everybody out. So we don't deny any part, right? It takes a lot of courage to hear your internal dialogue. And then as the head and the chairperson of your boardroom, you pick the one that you're aligned with, and that becomes the conclusion rather than your brain telling you, no, that's not a good move, or I can't do that, without telling you why, right? There's a whole meeting that happens. There's a whole conversation that happens below surface level in our below consciousness. And then our thought process or our conclusions about ourselves, what we can and cannot do, are usually not choices because we just get the conclusion, oh, I can't do this. That's not for me, right? But that's a conclusion to something that you weren't privy to. I'm like, no, bring it to your boardroom because you want to find out the entire conversation of this. And you are the one to run your own show. And that's super important because a lot of times we catch ourselves, and my clients catch themselves and not even realizing that there's something else that was motivating them that's actually not aligned. Because these are blind spots that we all have. So that ongoing check-in, even once you are on that journey of transformation and growth, which we all are at varying extents, but we all are. So it's just a matter of bringing awareness and intention to it. But as you continue, those check-ins with ourselves at different points of the day and every time we need to make a decision allows us then to authentically choose something that's aligned rather than letting something else run our show. When we have an encounter with a person, it was a difficult encounter, half the time it's a fear or some sort of pain point that's responding. It's really not us. That's why later you can regret it. Oh, I was too harsh. I was too this. No, I just wasn't me. Something else was speaking in my stead that I didn't even give permission to speak for me. And if you look at it that way, you're like, that's much more re-empowering. It's owning yourself, but it's much more re-empowering. So this book is about owning yourself fully, all of you, embracing everything, and then shifting what you don't like, don't want, what no longer serves you, but embrace it all. Because when you don't have shame around anything and you have light everywhere, like you shed light on all of you, you can have that inner boardroom conversation in a much freer way and get to your alignment and to what really means something to you much quicker. And then it doesn't become scary anymore. It actually becomes like, oh, I want to know. I want to know the truth about me because that's the only way that I can be freer and more of who I am and then happy and fulfilled and ultimately find my purpose and live it not only just unapologetically, but so well that it's also well received.
Yeah, I feel all of this so deeply right now. I think one of the things that I recall, so being an entrepreneur is very difficult because I feel like we are wired to, it's easier to just get a job and have a paycheck and have a 401k and the stability of all of that. And the options are endless when you're doing your own thing. And I remember having a business coach. I've had multiple business coaches, and one of them, you know, she worked with finding your story and using your story to help others, and that was beautiful. And then the only male coach I ever had, not to be sexist, but the only male coach I ever had, I was trying to discuss with him, you know, using my pharmacist education and creating things that really speak to women and not basing what I do on other people's fears of weight gain or, you know, those things. Right. And he was like, what you need to do is make money. Like you need to figure out how to make money and you need to simplify it and you need to create a product and you need to sell it and this. And it just felt so defeating to me that the answer was money driven because for me, that's not what, so he was projecting what drives him in his career is to, you know, establish a name, create a legacy, build money, build wealth, whatever. That's not necessarily mine. And I just walked away from it thinking, I don't even know where to start because that would mean creating something that doesn't align with who I am and what I want to bring to women. And so then I felt like, oh, well, either I'm wrong or I just wasted an hour. Either one, I can't really, I don't know which way to feel about it yet. Right. But it's so true. You can tell if you just sit and listen long enough to your inner voice, whether or not you're working in alignment with yourself.
Yeah. And I also believe, I truly do believe, not just from personal experience, but money's not enough. It's great. And when you do what you're aligned with, you'll be fine. Because you will find ways to be successful at it. Because you're successful internally at it, you'll find ways to be externally successful at it. And money is an external form, right? It's not internal. Money only it's a bonus, but it doesn't truly bring you happiness, fulfillment, or even purpose. So it's an external measure. But you have to start internally, and especially for women, because we're always asked to focus on something else, someone else, right? And not ourselves, which is why when we get to a certain age, we sometimes don't even know who we are. I don't think men go through that, not in that same way. But women do. They have an identity, sort of like questioning period. I'm not going to say crisis, but it's kind of like upheaval within, usually around also perimenopause and menopause. So it's a lot of things going on.
A lot of things.
Oh my goodness. But in reality, it makes perfect sense, is because at one point, intuitively, we realize, but wait, what about me? And not in a selfish way, in a self-owning way, in a self-leadership kind of way. I need to be me, and I need to take care of me, and I need to do these things. Nobody else can do it for me. And it's almost a sense of like re-empowering the woman in terms of, I'm responsible for myself, so now what am I going to do about it? And now that I have more mind space and time, what do I want to do about it? A lot of women don't know what they want because they've never asked themselves that, because they were always busy with other people's wants and needs. And that's okay. That's great. That just means that, and I know it scares a lot of women and maybe a lot of the audience members that are listening today, but it just means that you are so good at helping others that just take that skill set and now bring it inward. Right? Because there's always two ways of looking at things, a really empowering way and a really disempowering way. And we also have to be mindful that the brain's going to go for the disempowering way. It's wired like that. It's wired to show you what's out of place. It's wired to show you the danger. It's not wired to show you what's great. So we need to say, but I want to see that part of the picture, or I want to see the entirety of the picture, right? And once you see that, you go, what's aligned with me? And I want to know who I am. And staying connected is really important. And sometimes I have people as young as 17, 18, 19 coming to me as clients. And to them, I do like preventative stuff. In other words, stay connected, because there's a whole path. Nobody teaches you this. But we don't have to go through that if we just stay connected and learn how to have that relationship with ourselves at every step of the way, not just when we have more mind space and more free time on our hands.
Yeah. I hear a lot from friends and family, you're so good at taking care of people. You're so good at taking care of your kids. Or someone even just recently said, when I'm with you or when I'm spending time with you, I feel really cared for. And that's beautiful, but I also need to make sure that myself feels cared for.
Yeah. And a lot of times women are like, I don't have time for self-care and I don't have time. But self-care doesn't just mean taking a bubble bath, which I love to do, or going to a spa. It just means looking at the quality of the relationship you have with yourself. You may be a super busy person. You may be working 3 jobs. Whatever it is, that's fine. It's not about time. It's about space inside of you for you, and it's about that internal connection. As you go about your day, are you internally connected with you? Do you know whether you're aligned in what you're doing? Are you doing things that align with you in the way that aligns with you? You have to have a job where you work 10 hours a day to make ends meet. That's fine, but do it in a way that aligns with you, because then that's when you're showing up for you. That's when you're taking care of you. That's when you're partnering with yourself. And most importantly, that's when you're committed to yourself. I don't know how many of us women learn to commit to ourselves before we commit to others. And they're not mutually exclusive at all.
Yeah.
So I work with women, I show them that, and we work together, and all of a sudden their whole life changes without them ever speaking to anybody else on the outside. Even their relationships shift for the better because they're showing up differently.
And it's not selfish. It's just shifting.
It's self-owning. It's really something else. It's taking leadership of yourself. It's taking charge of yourself and showing up in the best way possible. When you show up in the best way possible, you're going to be better at everything else that you do for everybody else as well. But you've taken care of your stuff first. It's really like that cliche of being, on the plane and putting your own oxygen mask first. But there's a reason for that. And so we get it on the plane. We're like, okay, fine, whatever. But it's the same thing for life. When your cup is full, first of all, you're showing other people that they have a right and permission to also fill their own cup, which is a huge message, right? And second of all, your cup is actually full. How much better could you do if your cup was full, and how much better would you feel? And how much better would you feel about trusting yourself that you can meet your own needs? And then you would show up and not react to things, because inevitably something has to give if our cup is not full or if we're running on empty. And then really look at situations in the way that actually make them even better. Because the way we show up really kind of instructs the dynamics that we have and the interactions that we have. So we're not doing anyone a favor if we're running depleted. And it's not about getting, 10 hours of sleep versus 6. It's about how you show up for you. It's about what are you doing for the relationship with yourself? What are your thoughts about? Are your thoughts constructive and helpful and inspiring? Do you inspire yourself to wake up every morning and go to work, or do you push yourself and criticize yourself? And it doesn't take time. It doesn't cost money. It's a different approach. What is your approach to yourself? And is it the one that you would want your friend to have to you? What's your attitude towards you? We don't think about these things. We're just kind of stuck with whatever our brain comes up with.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that mindset shift can really change the second half of life for a lot of women.
Absolutely. And again, it's a choice, and it's a commitment, and it's a little bit of work around rewiring the brain. But in reality, it's entering a new kind of partnership with ourselves. And it's a lot of fun, and it's very exciting, and it's empowering from the get-go. So it's not excruciating. It's not like climbing a mountain, because I don't subscribe to that. That's not sustainable. It's really about these inner shifts where you reclaim your power that you have given away to circumstance, is saying, I don't have a choice, is saying it's never going to change, is saying, I don't know, and saying, well, what if I did? What if everything in my life was on me right now? Oh, I don't like that, right? I prefer to blame, but at the same time, it means, that means I have a power to do something about it, because if I've created this, it means I could create something else. And all of a sudden, you start thinking creatively rather than fearfully, and different ideas and opportunities. You see life through a different lens, and it really works.
I love that idea that you said earlier of thinking of, I think of menopause and perimenopause as the hurricane. And the fact that you were talking about your essence being the I, and that's the most calm place to center. I think that's a beautiful image for a lot of women to take away from this conversation. And I'd love to tell people where they can find you, because I feel like we're just scratching the surface. You have your book, you've done talks, you coach. So how can they find you if they want to know more?
So I have a website. It's easy. It's www.martinecohen.com. My email is martine@martinecohen.com. I want to let your audience know that I actually personally respond to every email. I don't have my assistant or anybody else. And I think that's important, because I like to stay in touch. That's the whole purpose of this. So I do actually respond. So I say I have this virtual open door policy, and that's what I mean by that. I also have that 4-minute reset. So it's on the website. So martinecohen.com/connect with me. And then they can sort of subscribe to it, and they'll get that 4-minute reset. The book is on Amazon. It's called No More Layers, Discover Your Inner Power and Reclaim True Freedom from the Inside Out. And it's a book that meets the reader exactly where they're at. It helps them on with their journey, and they can reach out to me. I do have a few spots left for coaching, not that many, but I have a few, and I'm more than happy to help. This is why I'm here, and I love to do this stuff. And I think that when we have the possibility, or we've gone through something that shows us, a better way to live, and we can share that with other people, I think that's beautiful, because we're here to help each other.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today. I'll put everything also in the show notes so people can just click the links and find all your information there as well. And I appreciate the time you spent today talking about this. And I'm excited for the readers to dig into the book as well.
It's been a true pleasure. Thank you, Victoria, for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Women Mastering Midlife. If something you heard today resonated, I'd be so grateful if you'd share it with a friend who might need a little extra support on her midlife journey. Remember, small changes can make a big difference, and you don't have to navigate this transition alone. We will be back next week with more expert guidance and compassionate conversations to help empower you to master midlife on your terms. Until then, you can find us on Instagram at Women Mastering Midlife, or come connect with me directly at Miss Victoria Bird. And you're looking for deeper connection and support, be sure to join us in the Women Mastering Midlife community. We'd love to continue the conversation with you there. If you've enjoyed this episode, please rate and review this podcast. It helps us reach more amazing women mastering midlife just like you. You'll find all the links from today's episode and ways to connect in the show notes below. See you next time.